Happy Wednesday, everybody. I'm Kevin Coop. I'm the content guy for morningnewsbeat.com, and I am pleased to welcome you all here today to our webinar, The Quest for Quality Produce in a Post-Pandemic World, sponsored by iFoodDS. So today is actually sort of a timely day on which to have this conversation because two things are happening simultaneously. One, we're observing the 1-year point in the pandemic. It is 1 year ago tomorrow that the decision was made to shut down the NBA, which certainly got almost everybody's attention and demonstrated that COVID-19 was worth worrying about and was going to reshape our lives and the economy. And if that didn't get our attention, the announcement that Tom Hanks had been diagnosed with COVID-19 certainly did. If Tom Hanks could get it, anybody could get it. What we know now is that the pandemic has accelerated some food shopping trends in unexpected ways, and we're going to explore some of those trends today. And we know that the growing eating at home trend prompted many consumers not to just shop differently, but to demand higher quality from their produce providers. Which brings me to the other thing that's happening right now. In addition to the anniversary of the pandemic invading the broad public consciousness, there's the fact that even as we look backward at a year of unprecedented challenges, we're actually starting to look forward to a year of opportunity. For the moment, the light at the end of the tunnel, it doesn't look like an oncoming train. But as much opportunity may lay ahead of us in what some people already are referring to, maybe a little prematurely, as the second roaring 20s, there also will be challenges. Our four panelists today are uniquely positioned to talk about those challenges and opportunities as we look forward and talk about what we've learned and how we plan to use those lessons. So our panelists today are Don Barnett, who is a co-founder and CEO at Sunbasket, a meal kit delivery service that ships members fresh, organic, and sustainable ingredients and recipes every week. He also was a founder of New Star and Organic Girl in Salinas. Tony Stallone, who's the chief merchant at Fresh Midwest, a new and exciting startup that partners with local farms, artisans, and restaurants to bring the best of fresh right to consumers' doors. And prior to that, Tony was with Peapod for 22 years. James Braswell is the senior director of produce and floral at Fresh Time Farmers Market, which has 70 stores throughout the greater Midwest. They focus on offering fresh and healthy food at amazing values. And Minos Athanasiadis is a VP at iFoodDS. Minos has deep experience in the produce industry. Prior to getting into the technology space, he managed growing and processing companies. iFoodDS offers fresh food supply chain solutions, including a leading quality management solution. And as I mentioned earlier, iFoodDS is sponsoring this webinar. Now, a reminder, you won't be able to ask questions as we go along, but we are going to answer questions at the end. So at any point that you want to, feel free to enter them into the Q&A box, and we'll do our best to get to them at the end of our session. So I want to start out by talking about consumer expectations and how they may be shaping future consumer trends. So James, let's start with you. You're the only one of our panelists with a bricks and mortar component. So let me ask you, how have you seen expectations change over the past year? How has your business evolved, especially when it comes to fresh produce, to meet those changes?
Well, I think the consumers still have that expectation of quality. There's been a lot of changes post-COVID in terms of how shoppers are, shop in our stores especially. I don't think there's been any change. They expect the same quality and freshness that they were getting when they were in the store picking it out themselves. So I don't think that has changed a whole lot, Kevin.
Do you think that's a function of the fact that you guys always had a reputation for high quality?
Yeah, I think the expectation, if they expected it when they were in the store shopping, I certainly think that carries over into getting the same expectation of products that they didn't pick out themselves. With the advancement of the online delivery services and the curbside pickups, I think they still have that expectation, rightfully so. They shouldn't get anything different than if they're in there picking it for themselves. And if they had that standard, coming into your place previously, I think they'll carry that over into our post-COVID world as we see it now.
But that has changed in terms of your business, right? Because the whole notion of, Fresh Time was always known for these big, beautiful bulk displays of produce that I would come into your store and I would pick from. The expectation now would be, if I come into your store, I really don't necessarily want to touch things that other people have touched, and they don't want to touch stuff that I've touched.
Correct. Which is, it's trended us, which, like you mentioned, our format was based on those big bulk displays. That's the format I've grown up in for the past 25 years. It's what it was built on, big, bulk displays, turn and burn, so to speak, we've had to move into more of the packaged arena, more bags, more wrapped items. The consumers, they don't want things being handled. They want to make sure that what they're getting hasn't been touched by as many people as possible, and that's just the reality we live in currently.
Don, how about Sunbasket? Now, I've always thought of Sunbasket, inaccurately as it ends up, as being a sort of just as a meal kit business like Blue Apron or Hello Fresh. You're a lot more than that. And has the consumer expectations over the past year, have they kind of accelerated the direction that you guys were going in anyway?
It really has, and yeah, we began as a meal kit company, and we've really diversified our product mix, mostly to touch different needs throughout the day. And who could have predicted a year ago the whole work from home phenomenon, where we used to get our lunches or maybe even our breakfasts on the go at the Starbucks lunches. Now people are a lot of people are sitting at home looking for solutions, and we were moving that direction already. So we continue to build that out. So we've got solutions throughout the day, from cooking solutions to pre-cooked solutions. But going back to produce, it absolutely is. It's an essential part of what we do. And as James was saying, people are, I view it as people used to be their own quality control, because they would go into Fresh Time markets and they'd look at the display and they'd pick what they want. Now people are getting it delivered home or picking it up at the curbside, and they've kind of lost that quality check. So there's a really critical function of building that trust that we really focus on.
Tony, tell us a little bit about Fresh Midwest, relatively new company. Tell us a little bit about how you're sort of rising up to meet consumer expectations.
Well, it's very interesting. When the pandemic hit, I think people's attitudes, people's buying behaviors changed dramatically. And I keep looking at this statistic that says 72% of consumers choose where to buy based on freshness and quality. Years ago in e-commerce, and as you stated earlier, I was 22 years with Peapod and a few years before with another startup in the e-commerce fresh business. We used to cite a statistic that said 90% of customers choose the quality of their berries, choose their store based on the quality of their berries, not the price, but the quality. I think that has become more important. We used to cite one of the barriers to e-commerce grocery shopping was the quality of produce. People wanted to pick themselves. That was 15 years ago. Over time, we saw that barrier really go down, that the game stake was, you're going to pick great quality produce for me. And if you don't, then I cancel you. Now it's raised even higher. And people that, with all respect to everybody on the panel, there is a different quality standard when it comes to e-commerce. Because as Don and James said, they're not picking it themselves, okay? So you have to establish a much higher quality. And the one thing I learned in this business over the years is that everything was involved in e-commerce and everything that's involved in produce itself, because my family goes back well over 100 years in the produce business. And I've had opportunities to work on the food service side and the retail side, that customers can't choose it for themselves. So you need to have a higher quality standard than what is normal. And the companies that understand that are going to be the most successful. And that has just accelerated, because during the pandemic, people sought out alternative channels to get fresh produce. Some country clubs, restaurants were selling fresh produce and other grocery staples and other fresh items just to try to stay in business. And people noticed a difference. So, and that I remember seeing anecdotally, and again, the other thing we should have to really think about is everybody's connected on social media. You're working on a digital platform ordering your fresh quality produce. You're also interacting on Facebook, on Instagram. So if you get a bad piece of produce, that might make its way to Instagram very, very quickly. That's why I want to, kind of re-emphasize the quality standard we have to up our game here in order to satisfy our customers. And customers have experienced different quality, and they know there's a different level of quality that is available to them now too.
James, to what extent are you monitoring this kind of stuff? I mean, the stuff Tony was talking about on social media, because he's absolutely right? Consumer expectations are often manifested in how people talk on social media, and it can build you up or it can take you down really, really fast. Are you monitoring that stuff so you can quantify and qualify the degree to which you're being successful in satisfying expectations?
Oh, absolutely. It is critical to keep up tabs on that, because it can make or break you. I mean, it's a new world now with, just like Tony said, it's immediate. You send somebody a bad item, it immediately will reach social media. We have a whole team actually dedicated to looking at our social media and all of our online and digital platforms to kind of mitigate and see what is actually occurring out in those forums, and try to identify issues that are occurring and that need to be addressed immediately, for sure.
And I would imagine that at some level that becomes, and it's even more important, that's become even more important over the past year, simply because there have been fewer people coming into the store, whether they're getting deliveries or doing curbside pickup. So the opportunity to interact with people in social media certainly that's become I would imagine that's become far more important in terms of your business model. How about for you, Don?
It's equally important. Just echoing what the guys said is it's a ticket to play. I mean, if you are not there delivering premium quality, you won't be in the game. And so it's something that we really focus on. We've even gone into our recipes, and wherever we can, we've built flex formulas. So we know, being a long time in the farming side, you can't farm diamonds year round. You just can't. And so you're going to have rough periods. And so what we've done is, let's say we have an arugula salad blend in one of our meals, and arugula is one of those things that can really move quickly in the field from great to not so great. If we get up to harvest and we're a day from harvest or 2 days from harvest and it doesn't look good, we will sub that out and we will go buy baby spinach or buy something else. I mean, those are the types of things that we do to ensure that the experience is a delightful experience.
That's so important, right? Because delivering once, I mean, you could hit home runs all year long, and all you have to do is I'm trying to come up with a baseball metaphor and I'm failing. You're only as good as your last hit, and the minute you ground one out, people go, he's no good, right? It's totally the way these things work.
Yeah, we don't want to get dropped down to the minor leagues. How's that?
As I stretch the metaphors, I can possibly do it. But in terms of meeting, I mean, we can all see the chart on the screen there. 72% of consumers choosing where to buy based on freshness and quality. I mean, the number that's interesting, so interesting, is that 84% of meals made were consumed at home in 2020 versus 48%. I mean, that's an amazing turnaround that has affected the business. And that meal kit sales are projected to more than triple by 2024. Let me add, Don, let me get your reaction to that last one. Does that seem like a good number to you? Is it conservative, or is it inflated?
No, I think that's right. I mean, we've seen the suffering, on the food service side in particular, where just everything's been shut down. We're not going to ball games, not going to restaurants at the level we were, and so to me that's very believable. And we've seen a surge that's pushed our business as more and more people are looking for solutions at home, and I think the data supports that.
There's a study that recently came out from Mercatus and Incisive that suggests that more than 21% of total grocery retail sales will come from online orders by 2025. And quite frankly, if that's only half right, it's still an enormous change. Does that strike you guys as being a number that's reasonable? Tony, start with you.
I think it's very reasonable. Everything has been accelerated, and we still don't know, kind of the pace of that acceleration. If you think about it, we always talked about, you don't hear very, very much about the millennials anymore, Generation X and Generation Z. They're more technology savvy. They value time a little bit differently, and they depend on technology to enable them to make smarter, wiser decisions. So I think that number can be much higher. And then, you can see the huge investments that are being made across all food retailers into e-commerce. They're not making that half-heartedly. They are dedicating their business to that because they realize, and they're very smart, that a lot more sales are going to come through this channel. So I think that number is somewhat conservative, if you had to ask me.
So as we emerge from the pandemic, do you think that do you guys think these numbers will persist? Do you think these trends that have been clearly have been established, do they continue? Do things start to back off? Do we see them backing off in fresh but accelerating in center store? James, what do you think?
I think it's going to continue. I think I think a lot of people were starting to potentially dabble in the online and the potential curbside prior to COVID. Many were forced to get into that arena when COVID broke due to quarantines and stay-at-home orders, and had the option they should get their groceries delivered and not go into a store and risk their health. And I think they've seen and felt the benefits of the convenience of having those orders being delivered to their doorstep, or for them just to drive up into a parking lot and someone brings their groceries out and loads them in the trunk for them. And as long as they're confident in the process, like we talked about earlier, they're confident that what they're going to get is what they want. I think that's going to continue. I don't think and especially like you said, the new generation of kids. And I have kids that are from the low 20s to their high 20s, and they were doing this before COVID. They were getting their groceries delivered, or they were going to pick them up curbside. We had never done it. It's not part of my generation, but we've done it since, and I think that's going to continue for sure.
If I may, Kevin.
Yes.
Yeah, to the point that James made, and to the point that Tony made earlier, this younger generation has certain expectations that you could attribute in part to COVID, but it's part of their makeup. Things like transparency. Where did my food come from? How was my food prepared? Things like food safety. How can I make sure that this set of products, this set of ingredients that I bring into my house is safe and wholesome to feed to my family? And it's not just COVID that's leading this trend towards food safety and so on, but it's also legislation, FSMA, the long suffering rule that the FDA has been pushing. It's coming around so that it's going to be demanding higher levels of traceability for certain products. It's going to be demanding higher levels of food safety for certain products. The assistant commissioner at the FDA is saying, I want to be able to tell within a matter of seconds where a particular lot of arugula, say, or a particular lot of spinach came from. And that's a big change that we didn't have to worry about, a year or two ago.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I do think that at some level there's a, and this doesn't change the need for retailers to be highly focused on quality and flavor and sustainability, all that kind of stuff. But I do have to wonder, up and down the generations, if the store, especially on the fresh side, and anybody who reads Morning Newsbeat knows I love e-commerce and I love e-grocery, but I do think there's an opportunity for even as the percentage of sales gone through e-commerce continues to grow, and I'm not sure it'll accelerate at the same rate, but for stores to turn the whole notion of focusing on quality and freshness into a store event, because I do think that at some level we are going to want to get out, right? I mean, I can say as somebody who's gotten one vaccine and I'm a week away from getting my second, I can't wait, right?
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I never look forward to a shot as much as I'm looking forward to this one. But I do think that people are going to be anxious to sort of get out. But I think that continues to ramp up the demand on retailers to turn freshness and quality into a sustainable and differential advantage, if you will. Does that sound, would anybody disagree with that notion? I know I'm talking, two of you are e-commerce guys, so maybe you're not thrilled with it going in store, but I do think that that's going to be important going forward. Don?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely important. Retail's not going away. It's just redefining a little bit the engagement, and so it's not going away at all. And so I think the leading retailers will do exactly what James is doing. Is how do we redefine this a little bit and make it hit the center of the bullseye of what our customers are looking for. I mean, I personally just love going into produce and seeing it in the shelf. And, when I get it delivered home, it serves a need, but there's nothing like going through a produce section and seeing it for yourself.
Tony?
Well, I just have to, I agree, things are going to rebalance. There's no question about it. But I think, the genie is out of the box right now, that people are looking at where they purchase and how they purchase much differently. And I do think there is going to be some hesitation going back into that produce department and kind of going through the bananas or going through the tomatoes and selecting just what you want. There is in the back of people's minds a little bit. So I would say that people are definitely going to go back to the store. Freshness and quality, I think Minos is absolutely right. One of the trends that we are seeing is that not only are people concerned about freshness and quality and where they want to know where their produce comes from, but they're also concerned about food safety. This is important information to the consumer. And I think all retailers need to be communicating that differently to the consumer in an ability that they can understand. It's funny, you see all of these different tracking methods. Like I can look at a piece of meat and there's a QR code and I can scan it and I can trace that all the way back to the farm and, albeit back to the cow itself. But can I really do that with produce? Can I trace the cold chain on that piece of produce? One of the other expectations about e-commerce that we haven't brought up yet is people that shop e-commerce, from our experience, shop with less intervals, less frequency than at the store. Therefore, the produce and the expectation is it has to last longer. That's why that quality is very, very important. That's why you really can't get to the day of or a couple days before. You really have to be shipping produce through e-commerce that has shelf life to it.
James, react.
Yeah, well, my perspective, and obviously being a brick and mortar store, we need those customers back in our stores. It's crucial to us. I mean, we obviously had to adapt. Retailer had to adapt to the new norm, and they had to pump up their curbside and their deliveries. But impulse sales is a major piece of a retailer's operation in terms of what goes through those registers, and we have to have those shoppers in stores shopping. So we need them back. We want them back. Part of our format, this farmers market format I've been a part of, we've relied on it. It's our bread and butter. And so we really need those folks back in the stores, and hopefully that will get there. I still think that online and the curbside will continue to be a big piece, but we need them. We need those customers back in our stores.
So if it's a given that even coming out of pandemic, even if people are suffering from a certain amount of post-traumatic stress, and I think there'll probably be a lot of that in the country for some time as we emerge from this, so there's going to be a greater focus on making sure food is safe, freshness, quality, things like that, especially if people continue to cook at home and are more focused on that. It seems to me puts so much more responsibility on the retailer to have both the people and the systems in place so that they can start to deal with that and make sure that they can assure that. So part of that is supplier relationships. So let me ask you all the question: to what degree have supplier relationships sort of changed and or evolved over the past year to respond to what we've all been going through? And to what degree do you think they need to continue to evolve going forward to meet some of the challenges that, like Tony was just talking about? And since I'm quoting Tony, I'm going to ask you the question first.
Oh, thank you. So this is always a slippery slope for me, because vendor relationships are different here in the United States than my experience at Ahold Delhaize when I looked at vendor relationships in Europe. I think there has to be much more partnerships. And when I say partnerships, it includes planning. It also includes food safety, of letting your vendors make investments in food safety and being able to afford a price or pay a price, an agreed upon price, to help make the products not only safer, but also fresher too. So I think the companies that are going to reach out to vendors in the fresh area, and especially in produce, that are going to partner in this area of quality and food safety together, I think they will make strides faster than other vendors, other farms, and other retailers too. So I really do think that right now, I think the U.S. relationship, especially in this produce industry, has to change their vendor relationship of more partnership versus bargaining ship. So that's just my opinion. It's something I feel very personal and very passionate about, because I see how it works out in Europe when everything is very open book and everybody is trying to achieve a better quality product and experience for the customer as their end game.
And to that point, if I may, like Dawn, I've spent a number of years as a grower, packer, shipper of fresh produce. The thing that improved the quality of our business, the thing that improved the quality of our company as a grower, packer, shipper, were those tight relationships that Tony's talking about. And not everybody may agree with me, but our relationship with Costco made us a better grower shipper. Our relationship with Walmart made us a grower, packer, shipper, because they put the law down. This is what our expectation is. This is what we want. Oh, and by the way, we're going to have a quarterly business review with you to go over those numbers with you. So what Tony's talking about is exactly what we need. And I agree. I think it's going to be going more and more that way.
James, are you implementing any kind of best practices in terms of supplier relationships and how you're developing the kinds of partnerships that Tony and Minos are talking about?
Honestly, nothing than what we've been doing since day one. I don't think that piece of it changes COVID or not. That's something that if you're a good operator and you have the procurement team, the right procurement team, you have all those things in place. You've already been doing that since day one. And that's a key piece. They're all important. Vendors are our partners. We have to treat them as partners because, we're in this together. We rely on them as much as they rely on us to do everything that is needed to hit everything we want to do. But, I don't know I don't think, my personal opinion, that hasn't changed. None of that has been changed for us for COVID. That's something those have been initiatives and things that we've strived to do since day one that we've started this company and every business that I did in previous lives as well.
So when you shifted from bulk presentations of things like potatoes or whatever, and had to have them bagged because of COVID, because people didn't want to touch them, did you have the kinds of relationships with your suppliers that meant that they had no problem providing it to you in a different form than maybe they were before?
Absolutely. And that's why you call them partners. They're going to adapt to the needs of their customers. And we are lucky enough to have really good partners to where when we needed to adapt post-COVID to a lot of items that we typically were mostly, if not exclusively bulk, we had to transition into some more bagged items. And, we needed a little different, we didn't just want the cookie cutter bagged item like a Brussels sprout that you can buy from many different Brussels sprout suppliers. We wanted something different. We wanted something more unique to our format. So we had to reach out to those suppliers and say, hey, here's what we're looking for. Here's how we want these bags to look. Here's what we need. And they were able to go ahead and make those adjustments for us. And so it's an important piece. But yeah, they were actually able to accomplish many of the things that we needed to adjust to post-COVID.
It's funny, I can't help but think to myself, I've been writing about the industry for 30, 35 years, something like that. And probably the first week that I did it, somebody probably said, yeah, we have to have better partnerships with our vendors. But in much of the supermarket industry, then they go out, I was going to say stab them in the back. That's probably a little bit extreme. But let's say they don't necessarily practice what they preach going forward. But it sounds like, at least in this segment of the business, perhaps because you're maybe more dependent on them in terms of freshness, in terms of quality, and because it's a more maybe tenuous factor in what you're doing. It sounds like those kinds of relationships are stronger than they would be elsewhere in the industry. What about you, Don?
Yeah, well, I think we're as much a tech company as we are a food company, and so we've got teams of data engineers and digital marketers and so forth. And the benefit of being direct to consumers, we get that immediate feedback. So one of the things that we were able to focus on is that what we call the delight, and we really are trying to delight customers. And so as we get feedback, we're also curating into recipes. And so we're not providing ingredients, we're providing solutions. And so what we've tried to do is we listen to our customers and we're trying to maximize delight. And so one of the ways that we do that is we're integrating back into our suppliers, and say with produce, we are not trying to have all produce items 12 months a year. It's very intentional. So we go to our growers and say, all right, when can you give the optimal sensory quality characteristics of the different items, and we'll feature those items in our recipes in windows throughout the year. And so it's another way that we've been able to ensure quality is through that partnership in time sequencing.
I have a question, Don, to your point, and actually maybe James can answer it as well. Are you guys able to take this information, this in your case, Don, delight information, and share it with your suppliers and say, this is what I'm hearing from my customers? Are you able to share this data with your suppliers and at some level benchmark your suppliers? I mean, not everybody has more than one berry supplier. Everyone has more than one iceberg lettuce supplier. Are you able to use that information to benchmark those suppliers and at some level reward the better ones and move back on some of the the ones who are having troubles?
I'd say this, Minos, we do have the ability. I don't think we've really fully built that out right now. We've got it built out all the way through our recipes. And so what I challenged our culinary team is we have what we call a love index. It's a simple thumb down thumb. And so whenever you cook a recipe, we ask our customers, go and just give it a thumbs up. I've challenged them that we need to average 90% or better. You recognize there is some fickleness to palates. I like spicy. Somebody likes spicy, they get a thumbs down because it was too spicy or not spicy. You can't get it perfect, but what's really interesting is over time you can take that and you can feed that into what are the source challenges. And when we run into the challenges that are supplier driven, we absolutely feed that back. It's like, hey, that if we're talking pasta, it's a little mushy. We didn't like the texture of that. Or obviously in produce, hey, there was brown or burn, and we got a lot of negatives on that. And so we do feed that back. We pretty much leave it into our produce team to sort that data, do it probably more traditionally than the deep data integration in other areas.
James?
Yeah, it's the same in retail. I mean, those buyers, they manage those vendors, and they know who they can count on. They know who can perform for them day in and day out. We obviously don't have the option to pick and choose when we want to carry items, when they're at the peak season and when they're not. We have to carry things basically around. There's not a whole lot of produce items these days that you can't get year round from imports and everything else. But they just, they know who those guys are. We have some technologies that help us manage those vendor relations and some of those scorecards for those vendors. But pretty much the same retail.
Tony?
Well, I think Minos has it exactly right. The benchmark or the scorecard, as James just said, is extremely important. So, and I think, companies that are successful, I don't know as much and haven't had a lot of dealings with Costco, but Costco has been very successful. And I think part of it is that vendor relationship. So if I were to start benchmarking our suppliers, which we do, is where does quality stand on that? Is quality third, fourth, fifth, or is it number one in your scorecard? That's the most important thing. And then, in fact, we're having a conversation with one of our vendors right now regarding the quality of their products, because it's not what we were promised. And again, when we look at our scorecards, quality is number one. Price is really down there further as 2 or 3. So it's quality, service, as far as fills and as a responsiveness, and then it's really price. Because we feel like that top part of our scorecard is the most important to us.
Well, doesn't that require sort of a consistent set of values that kind of works that is kind of imbued throughout the supply chain? I mean, if you're communicating that to your consumer and then you're communicating that to your supplier, the best thing is that it somehow gets built into the DNA of the whole supply chain. Because if it breaks down anywhere in that system, you end up with problems. I mean, Don, in your case, the supply chain as it's going through the consumer, it includes FedEx or UPS, right? You actually don't have any control. Maybe is the wrong word, but you don't have much control over the last mile in a way that other retailers maybe do. I mean, James, you work with third-party delivery companies, but you're getting it pretty close to the last mile, right? Don, you've got a different set of challenges.
We do, and I call it, once it leaves our facility, we go from an active, refrigeration to passive. So, we're putting our meals and produce in boxes with insulation around it and ice. And so, we've really aggressively test. We are sending many test boxes every week, testing performance of different materials, but keeping that produce, to me, it's about speed and temperature control. So if you don't control that, you're not going to have a good experience. So we really focus on the speed from the source supplier. We get it delivered just in time, and within 1 or 2 days, it's on customers' doorstep. So that is about as fast as you can do it. And that temperature piece becomes critical, particularly in the hot summer months. And we block out areas. It's painful, but we block out areas when the temp gets too hot and we don't think we can deliver a good experience.
Do you find consumers respond to that positively? I mean,
in general, yes. It's all about messaging. It starts with disappointment, and so we give them options like, hey, we can deliver it to you. We can deliver it through the last mile. What the problem with delivering on a doorstep is you don't know how long it's going to sit there. That's the problem. So we don't have any problem getting it to the doorstep, even in high temp. But if it's sitting there for 6 hours or 8 hours, you won't have a good experience when you're sitting in 105-degree temps. And so we give options to deliver to other places that are more temperature controlled. And by and large, customers totally get that, and they actually respect that and appreciate it.
I think that's a really good point. Sometimes when you tell a customer they can't have something and then communicate effectively why, and that it's about quality, that's as powerful a statement as delivering a high quality product to the customer at another time of year. I mean, I think that's hugely important. So talk to me, guys, about technology and the role that technology can play in sort of making this all happen. I mean, I gather you still need somebody to look at the artichoke, the berries, the bananas, the potatoes, the tomatoes, and to say which something's good or bad. But I would imagine at this time, I mean, Don, you said you're as much a technology company as a food company. How do you employ technology to sort of raise the bar in terms of what you're able to offer? James?
Yeah, well, yeah, there's a lot. I mean, digital processing is just increasingly powerful, right? And so we do a lot of the things that I'm sure Tony and James companies do on receiving and tracking and lot coding and all that. We're actually looking even more and more into AI technologies. There's actually an interesting article this week, and I think it was in the New York Times, about that, and how the role of inspectors is large. I'm using inspectors as an example. It's largely kind of this mundane, repetitive, but at some point there's that judgment. And so can we bring technology to help with that judgment? And that gets maybe centers around a blemish or something like that. And so we're looking at different, developing different tools that we can bring that even more digitized, and connect that even better throughout our system.
Actually, sorry for interrupting.
Go.
That is, our insights platform, which is used broadly in the retail industry. Tony mentioned Ahold Delhaize, Aldi, Meijer. Thank you, Fresh Time, James. We have literally millions and millions, if not billions, of images of high quality produce and poor quality produce. And what does anthracnose in lettuce looks like? What does tip burn look like in romaine lettuce? And what that is leading us to is, with all this huge library of images, at some point we'll be able to take an image of a product coming in, regardless if it's strawberries or if it's peaches, and we'll be able to say, on the basis of our image library, you may have 3% decay, you may have a condition defect on 2% of this, and it literally will make this whole inspection thing much faster and more efficient and more consistent.
So Minos, what else can technology bring to the table?
So, from our perspective, we're a technology company. I don't want to call us a high technology company, because we have three primary tools that we offer our customers. Two of those are essentially digitizing paper records, traceability, being able to follow the product from point A to the end consumer. Food safety, being able to digitize the data of all the food safety practices that folks put into it. Probably what's most pertinent to our discussion today is our insights platform, which helps provide consistency. We have one customer that has 60 distribution centers throughout the country. How can they make sure that the product they receive in Fargo, North Dakota, is the same quality and standards that they receive in Miami, Florida? Our tool enables to bring that consistency from distribution center to distribution center, and from inspector to inspector within these distribution center. And this is a very basic tool that our customers are getting significant value from. We talked earlier about benchmarking suppliers. How can, produce traditionally was a relationship business, still is a relationship business. A lot of the knowledge, Tony has been in this business, his family, 100 years. There's very few Tony and Tonys anymore in this business. And we need to find some tools to take this tribal knowledge that we've had in the produce industry and make it available to a broader group of potential buyers, inspectors, and so on. So that's where I see our business going. This is where I see technology from our end.
And you're absolutely right. There are very few Tonys in this business. James, how are you guys using technology?
Well, it's a really effective tool for us. I mean, it's new. We're new in the arena of really using technology in our QC, in how we do our quality control in our distribution center. But it's the main things that it really has helped us with, and Vito's mentioned already, is it's driving efficiencies in the process, which that's a big advantage, because when those guys get busy, and that happens many days, when they fall behind, things can fall through the cracks. And what the technology has helped us do is make them much more efficient out on the dock. They can get through things much more quickly than they had in the past. And that really has allowed them to spend the appropriate time on everything coming in the building, and not having to take any shortcuts when they have either a busy day or they're short staffed, or whatever the reason may be. Because they have everything at their fingertips. They have the specs, they have the pictures, they can do everything right from the inspection point. They don't have to walk themselves back to a computer to input an inspection report. And the other thing that the technology does for us now is that it creates those professional inspection reports, that we're proud to send out, that we're proud to share with our vendors when we do, find any quality problems and anything coming in the door. And then the reporting tools, like we had mentioned earlier, it helps us to scorecard our vendors, and also scorecard our inspectors, to make sure that we've got the right people in place. But it's been a real help for us.
I want to move on to the Q&A in a second, because I want to check and see if we have some questions. But let me ask you one quick one and see if you can give me a quick response. I would imagine that one of the things that this technology, like Minos is talking about, it does two things. First of all, I would imagine it allows you to be more effective in terms of evaluating ROI on the produce that you're bringing in. But it also, I would imagine you're able to better figure technology itself. You're able to figure out the ROI on that. Is that a fair observation, Don?
Yeah, I'd say we're still figuring it out, but it absolutely, that is the path where it's going. And we, for sure, we measure, loss and claims and everything else against specific things. And so as we're able to pinpoint that more tightly, and the data is there, it's like catching up our systems, it's just going to make that even stronger.
Tony?
Let me make one point here. Technology is extremely important. If you think about e-commerce, and we're talking about e-commerce and produce quality in the minds of the customer, that technology is really important, because e-commerce operates downstream. So what I mean by that, you have to use and embrace technology upstream. Okay, and that technology needs to change and it needs to get better, and companies need to make investments in that. So that's where it plays a very, very important role, is the upstream part of it. So because you do not want to be dealing downstream at, when Don is putting together meal kits and produce, he wants every protection possible so when he knows that hits the dock, it is ready to go and it is the best of the best. So I think that's where technology is important. And to your point about ROI, just really quickly, because you said quickly, is you would love to at some point match your shrink at a store level versus the reports that were received on the incoming and the of what that was received at. So that's where I think ROI would become very, very important in the future.
James, 30 seconds on ROI.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna just say what both Don and Tony said. I mean, it's still in the initial stages of really trying to figure out what the ROI is on this technology. But and just like Tony said, it's being able to compare shrink at store level versus what was taken into the DC, and how do they correlate, and how do they match up, and what are the cause and effects of some of that stuff.
And Minos, real quickly, I would imagine that ROI is really important in terms of when you're talking.
Absolutely. Thankfully, a number of our customers don't take our word for our ROI, but rather do in-depth studies. One particular customer with headquarters in Europe, but a major US presence, did an in-depth return on investment study, lasted about 2 months. And they determined that they were able to achieve ROI on their investment in a month to 2 months, so just based on the reduction in shrink, the quality of the produce, higher sell-through at store level, which certainly made us feel good about it.
So we have a question here, Minos, about, is it practical for retailers of every size to be investing in this kind of technology? Is there a point at which a retailer, they're not going to see the kind of return on investment, or does that matter?
I honestly don't think it matters, because if you can provide consistent quality store to store, day to day, for consumers, you're going to see an ROI. We have customers who have 35 stores. We have customers who have 2,000 stores. We have customers who have 60 distribution centers. And the truth is, as Don and Tony certainly know, most software these days is available as a service, right? You don't need to have a big, heavy implementation take place. You can turn it on and off as you see fit, and just have your IT department sort of observe how it's done without having an in-depth implementation.
Tony, let me ask the size question of you as well, because you're now with Freshman West. It's a startup, but you were at Peapod, Ahold, Delhaize. You were, it's big. Is there a difference in terms of how you are approaching either the use, or the implementation and acquisition of technology?
Yes, I mean, obviously, and then that was, it's great to have that experience of having the scale of an Ahold Delhaize, of a global retailer, and the investments and the dedication they make to quality investments too. So, and again, we're part of a parent company too. We're part of a food service company that has very similar technology. Our facilities, where I'm with now and where we were before, is GFSI, which also helps enable the technology that you need in order to achieve that global food standard recognition, which is going to be, I think it's still going to be very, very important as we go on in the consumer's mind.
So we have one more question here as we begin to wrap this up. Appreciate all the time you guys have spent today, which is, how do you think that your companies will be different a year from now, if at all, than they are today, or were, I'll even add on to that, or were going into the pandemic? Don, let's start with you.
Yeah, I think probably the biggest thing that we're doing is probably more along the lines of acceleration than really a pivot to strategy. And what we're doing is with COVID, all the changes that have happened, it's also created a much greater increase of awareness and need for health and wellness. So what Sunbasket has always been our strategy is we've got these massive ecosystems. We've got this food ecosystem, and you've got this health and wellness ecosystem. What we're doing is we're connecting those two to make them work together, because they don't work well together right now. You center in here, and if you've got a health condition, knowing how to bridge that is not that easy. So that's probably one of the biggest things we're doing, is connecting the individual food and ingredients all the way through the health viewpoint.
That's a huge thing, it seems to me. I think we've all become much more aware over the past year of the fragility of our own health, even if if that's what happens when you start wearing masks all the time, right? And so I think being able to connect what I eat with how healthy I'm going to be in a more fundamental way,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a huge deal. James,
Yep.
How are you gonna be different?
Yeah, that's a hard question to ask. I don't know how much
No, by the way,
different it will be.
just it was an easy question to ask. Maybe it's a hard question.
Right. It's a hard one to answer. So for me, it's hard to say in retail what's going to be different from today versus a year from now. I'm sure we're going to see some things change, and for us, it's making sure we're set up to adapt wherever this thing ends up heading. Whether we see a big increase that we talked about in continuing with the online and curbside, or if we start to get back to some normalcy with more customers returning to in-store shopping. I think it's hard to say. I think the health piece of it, the cleanliness and the sanitation and all that stuff's gonna, I think, continue to have to be the number one priority for stores. No one's gonna forget what's going on right now, and everyone's gonna, I think, know that this could potentially happen again at any time. So they're gonna be really cautious of where shopping and making sure they feel safe when they do it. And I think, that's currently happening now. I don't think that's what's going to change. It's hard to say for me, honestly, what's going to change.
Tony.
I personally, let me echo health. That was important 10 years ago. It's important now. It's going to be more important 25 years from now. That was a great point by Don. The other one, curation. And I think Don said it, solutions. Customers are expecting solutions from us. And I see customers more dependent on helping them choose what's right for them and their family at the time of the year, that I think Don had mentioned as well, of making sure that we put that positive produce experience in there. And the other thing that I see a year from now is also speed to the customer, getting the customer their delivery when they want it much faster than we are right now. I think that is just going to be game stakes for everybody involved in fresh e-commerce.
So Minos, bring us home but obviously broaden it out a little bit in terms of how you think the produce business at all these retailers, and obviously lots of others, may be different a year from now than it is today.
So I think everybody on the panel emphasized the fact that quality is supreme. And from a grower's perspective, we're seeing growers get much better, compared to when Don and I started in the produce business. The quality of the product leaving the farm right now is much higher than it used to be at any time in recent memory. So I think we're going to continue to see higher quality standards on the part of the consumer. We're also going to see much higher expectations on the part of the consumer with regard to transparency, with regard to ease of use and solutions, as a number of folks have mentioned. Healthfulness, as James said, I want to buy it in a bag. I don't want 10 people having pawed through my fruit. And wellness. How can I use certain foods? How can I eat cleaner? How can I eat better using cooking foods like that? So from my perspective, it's all positive and it's all going in the right direction.
Well, we are bumping up against the end of this session. First of all, I want to thank Don and Tony and James for spending some time with us today. I hope our audience learned a lot. I know I learned a lot, and I really appreciate your being willing to share your time and your expertise with us. And for the audience, my name is Kevin Coop with morningnewsbeat.com. I was thrilled to be part of this today. Minos, over to you for the last word.
Kevin, thank you very much for moderating this panel. I too want to thank our audience and Tony and James and Dawn for taking time of your calendar to talk with us and to our audience. And I want to let our audience know that a link to the webinar will be sent to you within the next 24 hours. And thank you very, very much for attending, and thanks to all of you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Right. Thanks.
Bye.
Good.